Hey everyone, how's it going? Forrest here, again with another installment of my complete analysis of all 389 Bach chorale harmonizations. I've been doing some research and it turns out that there are actually more than 389. I've just been going off of the volume that I have, so I might have to change my title once I've collected all of the chorale harmonizations to analyze. But more analysis means more fun, so I'm looking forward to it regardless. I'm still nursing a sore throat. That being said, I'm really happy that we have another short chorale today because of the fact that, I can't really talk for as long, but we will get right into the analysis regardless. Today's chorale is Herr, Jesu Christ, du höchstes gut, which translates to Lord Jesus Christ, you highest good. Alright, we're in the key of G minor. 2 flats in the key signature, and we start off on G and end on G with our tonic triad first. We then have C, A, E flat, and G. You know, Bach loves his 2-6-5 chords. This is A minor 7 flat 5 over C. We then have D, A, D, and F sharp with a passing 7th in the alto. That is a root position D major triad or a 5 chord. We then have E flat, G, B flat, and G. We have a deceptive progression very early on. That's an E flat major triad, which is 6 in the key of G minor. And then we have D, C, E flat, and A, which I reckon this D is our culprit here of what's not what doesn't belong to the chord. And we actually have another 2-6-5 chord again, or not even a 2-6-5, but even just a 2-6, because we don't have a G anymore. No G in the melody. Okay, next we have D, F sharp, A, and B. I'm tempted to say that... I was tempted at first to say this B was the suspension, but I think this F sharp is the accented non-chord tone, and really what's being implied here is 1-6-4 G minor over D, which turns into 5 on the next beat, D, F sharp, D, and A. So we have this 1-6-4 going to 5 happening here in anticipation for the cadence, and then we finally get a perfect authentic cadence in the key of G minor, ending on our tonic triad. Looking ahead to the next phrase, we have a half cadence in the key of G minor, so we're still analyzing in the key of G. We have another tonic triad on the pickup to the next phrase. We then have G, C, E flat, and A, which is another 2 chord, another 2-7 chord even, but this time it's in third inversion, which is really interesting. I don't think it's unprecedented, but this is a 2-4-2 chord. I think we've encountered 1 or 2 before, but it's definitely uncommon, so it's interesting to see the bass with the diminished triad spelled over it. We then have F sharp, C, D, and A. That's D7 over F sharp, which is 5-6-5. We then have F, B natural, D, and D, which is B diminished over D. That's the leading tone chord to C, which is our 4, so this would be 7-6 of 4. We then have E flat, C, G, and C, which is our 4 chord, C minor in first inversion. We get this neighboring tone F sharp here, which turns the chord into F, C, C, and F sharp, E flat, C, and C, which kind of implies a little bit of a passing 7, a 7-4-3, which usually bridges. We usually see a passing 7 chord, or at least a leading tone in between 4 and the tonic, and we get D, D, G, and B flat, which is our tonic triad and second inversion as we get ready for the cadence. But we get this really beautiful interruption here. We get C sharp, E natural, G, and B flat. Very beautiful chord here. This is C sharp fully diminished 7th, which is the leading tone chord to 5. So this would be 7-7 of 5. And then we cadence on D major, which is our 5 chord. So it's a really interesting cadence because we have the 1-6-4 chord interrupted by another chord. And the fact that it's interrupted by a chromatic harmony is interesting as well. Alright, looking ahead, we have another perfect authentic cadence in the key of G minor. We start off with our 1 chord, G minor, root position, or sorry, not in root position, in first inversion, because we have B flat in the bass, B flat, D, G, and D. We then have G, E flat, G, and C, which is a 4 chord in second inversion actually, and this is kind of like a pedal, but it's more so just a byproduct of the fact that the bass is being tied over from the previous measure. But then we have A natural, F, F, and C, which is F major, which would be a 7 chord in first inversion, a flat 7 more specifically, and some people might call this 5/6 of 3. However, we don't get 3 afterwards, so I don't think that's a very strong analysis. We get G, D, F, and B flat, but I think this F is a accented non-chord tone, and we actually get G, B flat, E flat, and G, which is 6/6, which in and of itself, it's kind of a deceptive progression because we expect 4/7 to go to 1, but it goes to 6. So this is just another take on 5 going to 6, albeit we're not doing so via a dominant 7, or sorry, a 7 chord that's functioning dominantly. We're going to 6 via flat 7, which is interesting. Definitely a cool progression. We then have G, C, E flat, and A, another 2 chord in third inversion. A minor 7 flat 5 over G. Makes me feel better to analyze it this way because we've seen one earlier. We then have 4 non-chord tones, which usually fires the indicator off in my brain about the fact that there's definitely a passing chord here. We have F, D, D, and B flat. That would be a B flat chord in first inversion, or sorry, second inversion. So that'd be 3/6/4. Kind of interesting to come after a 2 chord that way, because we would usually expect a dominant after 2. Almost always we would expect 5, but the fact that we're getting a passing 3 chord might imply the fact that we're getting some parallel harmony, at least parallel numbers, so numbers that are adjacent to one another. So 2, 3, maybe 4 afterwards. E flat, G, C, and C. Yeah, that's what I would have expected. 2, 3, 4. We see that from time to time in Bach. And then we get A again here, which kind of does imply a passing 2/6. Might as well, with the accelerated harmonic rhythm, might as well mark that, because we have E flat, C, A, and C. All in all, very interesting progression so far. And then we have D, D, F sharp, and B. Interesting. We kind of have an implied 1/6/4 here, but it never gets to be fully realized. So how do we go about analyzing it? Because we have B flat, D, D, and F sharp. I guess with that being the case, all of these are accented non-chord tones, and we're looking actually at C, E flat, G, and B, which is a 4/7 chord. But really there is kind of an implied 1/6/4 going on here as well. So I'll go ahead and offer that analysis. Even though we have the F sharp there, it just gets interrupted. Bach does that quite often, where he interrupts the chord realizing the way it's supposed to by changing the trajectory. We then get D, A, F sharp, and the A leaps up to D in the tenor as well. That would be a 5 chord, root position, D major, and then we cadence on G minor, G, B flat, D, and G. Okay, looking ahead, we have a imperfect authentic cadence in the key of F major. However, we have some interesting stuff going on here at the beginning, and I don't think we immediately go to to F major. I think we actually go to F major via D minor. So we can call this G chord right here, because we just get another G minor chord, similar to how the first phrase ends, just like how kind of this phrase looks very similar to the first, this phrase looks very similar to the first phrase. We can say that we modulate to D minor here, and it sounds a lot like D minor, not just because of the C sharps, but because we have the flat 6 going down to D, and it really doesn't start to sound like F major until the half note here. I think this D, sort of cadencing on this D minor chord here, is where we pivot. but it undoubtedly sounds like D minor to me here. So we can call this G minor chord 4 in the key of D minor. Then we get G, C sharp, E, and A. Another one of these third inversion 7 chords. This is A7 over G, which is 5-4-2, which is where 4 would, I guess want to go, because they share a bass, and 4 wants to go to 5. Then we get some non-chord tones. We have D, D, F, and A. That would be D minor over F, which would be 1-6, which is where 5-4-2 goes, so that's good. When I say that's where 5-4-2 goes, I mean that's typically where we expect 5-4-2 to go. 5-4-2 is a relatively common chord. You see it in many of Bach's chorales, and it goes to 1-6 pretty much every time. We then have E natural. We have E natural, D, and G. But this D is an accented non-chord tone, and this is just a C sharp diminished chord in first inversion, so 7-6 in the key of D minor. And then we get D minor. We get D, A, D, and F. Tonic triad with a lot of counterpoint in the upper voices, but I really do think it's just G minor for this entire stretch. Sorry, not G minor, D minor. And I think this is also where we modulate to F, where this is now our 6th chord. And you could say the modulation happens really anywhere in this 2.5 beat zone. But yeah, I'm just going to mark it under the 1 chord here. Here I have a little bit of a passing 5 over the D, because we have this long pedal in the bass. But yeah, that's just something I'll mention. I won't analyze it on the page. We then have D, A, D, and F. We end on the 1 chord. Then we have A, C natural, F, and F. That is a tonic triad in first inversion, so 1-6. And that's a passing chord, because it's happening on and of 1. Even though it looks like it's the first chord that's happening, we actually have a 1 chord happening on the downbeat. We have B flat, D, F, and G. That is a G minor 7 over B flat, which is 2-6-5. Bach loves his 2-6-5 chords. And here's what makes the cadence authentic. We have C, C, E natural, and G, which is a 5 chord. This cadence happens over a very short period of time, only a beat and a half, before we cadence on F major, which is our tonic. Now, the end of the last phrase is a perfect authentic cadence in the key of G. However, there is some symmetry between these two phrases, I believe. I believe that we don't immediately go to we don't immediately go back to G minor. We go via B flat major, similar to how we go through the relative minor to the major here. We go through the relative major to get to the minor here. And I think that's a very beautiful gesture. And if you listen to the chorale, maybe you'll agree with me. You could analyze this entire thing in the key of G minor. It just doesn't sound that way. It sounds like A is functioning like the leading tone to B flat, and G doesn't really get introduced until the middle of the phrase, maybe even here. We'll see how it goes. But we'll call this F major chord that we get here 5. And we know we're modulating to something with E flat in it because we get the E flat in the bass, so this F feels dominant. So it feels pretty elegant, analysis-wise, to call this a 5 chord, as opposed to 5 of 3. Then we go to D, D, F, and B flat. It's a tonic triad, B flat major in first inversion. We then have some passing, or a neighbor tone in the bass and a passing tone in the alto. We then have D, E flat, A, and C, but I reckon this D is our non-chord tone, and it's actually C, E flat, A, and C, which is an A diminished chord, which in the key of G minor would be 2. And actually, the more that I look at it, it might make sense to say that we modulate here. Yeah, it might make more sense to say that we modulate here. The reason why I say that we modulate here is because we get this very interesting chord here on beat 3 of the second or third to last measure, because we get B flat, F, A, and D. Not B flat, we get a tonic. If we were still in the key of B flat here, this would be a tonic triad. That is just a very unashamed, very bold 7 chord tonic triad, which does not really happen all that much. Bach is an enigmatic, or was an enigmatic composer, and his music broke all sorts of rules, and his relationship with harmony was very distinct. However, I think maybe just for making the analysis seem a little bit clearer, we might modulate to G minor here. I think there's an argument to be made that we are in G minor when we arrive at the dominant of G minor, so it's not like a weak analysis or me like grasping for straws here or anything like that, because 2, we have seen 2 go to 3 before, and here in fact it is doing that. It's going to 3-7. So 3-7 is something that we would expect more so in a minor key than we would expect a 1-7 in a major key. That would be kind of ahead of Bach's time, a very jazzy gesture to cadence on a 7 chord, a major 7 chord or a minor 7 chord, that is. Then we get a passing tone, or a neighbor tone, sorry, in the bass. We then get this really interesting chord. We get B flat, F sharp, D, and D. Kind of how like we have this chord right here with the B flat and the B flat and the F sharp. But actually this is, I think, the A we're looking at here, and this B flat's just a appoggiatura. So we have A, F sharp, D, and C, which is D7 over A, which is 5-4-3. And we've seen 3-5. It's a relatively normal progression for Bach. It's not the most common, but it's relatively normal. We see 3 going to 5 because 3 is for all intents and purposes, a tonic functioning chord. It's a substitute for 1. Okay, moving ahead towards the cadence, we have G, G, D, and B flat. That's our tonic triad. B flat gets introduced in the bass. That just inverts the chord. We then get E flat, G, C, and C. That's a C minor triad, inversed inversion, so 4-6. Passing tones, and 3 of the voiceless. Let's see if that analyzes to anything. We have D, G, D, and B flat. Yeah, we could say there's a passing 1-6-4 chord there. We're getting ready for a cadence. It's also part of a passing figure, which is where we expect 1-6-4 chords to locate, or to be located. We then have C, G, E flat, and A. That is another 2-6-5 chord. A minor 7 flat 5 over C. And then we get an inversion of the chord here. A, G, E, and A. So we kind of get like E flat. We kind of get like a 7. There's still a 7 here, but there's no. So it'd just be like 7-5. There's no 3 because there's a missing C. We get that on the 8th note before it. And then we get D, F sharp, D, and A with a passing 7th in the alto. That's our 5 chord in root position. And then of course we cadence on 1 major. Bach uses the Picardy third here, as he does in most of his minor chorales, to cadence on a happier note. It's just a very stylistically common thing to do. So that's today's analysis. All in all, we had some really interesting progressions, some parallel chords going on here. And when I say parallel, I don't mean parallel in terms of their structure, like a bunch of ascending diatonic sixths or fifths or anything like that, but we get adjacent harmonies, like numeric adjacency. But other than that, really, the chords function the way that they are supposed to, for the most part. I'm looking for any like outliers. This interrupting 7-7 of 5 in between the 1-6-4 and the 5 chord was a pretty beautiful moment. Lots of this juxtaposition with B flat and F sharp throughout the piece. It's very cool. Creates a very interesting sound. Suspending the third of the chord with the 7th underneath it creates a very interesting sound. But other than that, pretty straightforward chorale. Very beautiful chorale, actually. I really enjoyed it. Bach used this melody quite a bit. I think he harmonized this melody in 3 or 4 of his chorales, actually. Yeah, he's harmonized the melody quite a few times, and it also pops up in his other vocal music as well, his non-chorale vocal music, like the arias and recitatives, things like that. But other than that, thank you so much for tuning into the video. I hope you enjoyed the analysis. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's analysis. I hope my throat feels better so I don't have to keep straining my voice. But I will leave you on that note. Thank Thank you so much for supporting the channel, and I hope you take care.